From the Skyterra Wellness Retreat, this is the Inspired Intentions Podcast, where we help people build the skills and mindset to live a healthy life.
Inspired Intentions listeners, I am not on TikTok, but occasionally TikTok recipes make their way to me. And 2 days ago, I heard about a TikTok recipe called scrambled oats from none other than Alan Broyhill, our executive producer. And if you have not seen the scrambled oats recipe, I highly recommend you check it out. I haven't made them yet, but I am not someone who loves to cook, but I do like to have satisfying meals that are healthy, and I feel like scrambled oats are going to check all of those boxes. It's just egg, banana, and oats, and you can add berries to it or yogurt or cottage cheese. And I have that tab pulled up on my computer, and I'm going to make it as soon as possible. Our episode today has nothing to do with scrambled oats or TikTok, but we do have a dietitian on the show, and so I'm really excited to talk to her and maybe get her opinion on scrambled oats before we get into our topic. So without further ado, Kelsey Smith, welcome.
Hey, Rachel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I have not heard of scrambled oats, but I feel like an egg with my oats, I'm not sure about it.
Okay.
I just don't know
about
that.
Maybe then you could test it out. I'm going to give you the recipe.
Okay.
You can test it out with our guests.
Yeah.
I think you can really customize it too, maybe for breakfast or for lunch.
I bet you could. I think it's the name, scrambled oats, that throws me off.
Okay.
It doesn't sound sweet. I don't know.
It sounds like two things that shouldn't be together.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are putting cottage cheese in things that shouldn't have cottage cheese in them, and it's reminding me of that. So.
Okay, so maybe you could try the recipe and then rename it.
Yes.
And then get back to us.
Okay.
But Kelsey, this is your first time on our podcast. So first of all, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to the show officially.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Could you please, for our listeners, just introduce who you are and what you do at Skyterra, how long you've been here, your expertise, etc.
Yes. So I am coming from the Midwest. About a year ago, I started with Skyterra, but I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and went and did my undergrad in Missouri State University in Springfield with a minor in biomedical science. Not very fun. And then I went and did my dietetic internship and master's in Illinois at Illinois State University. And about a year ago, I came out to Skyterra just to see the campus, and I fell in love with it. I was just thinking on my way in here today, it's funny, like at this time last year, I was trying to look at every single podcast, listen to every single podcast before I landed on the campus, just so I really knew what Skyterra was. And
our podcast?
Yes, and there was like 120 episodes, and I would spend all my days walking my dog, listening to all the podcasts, and so, yeah, when I came on the campus and they were training me and just showing me the ropes, I'm like, oh, yep. Heard that on the podcast.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great.
Yeah.
We love when people listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that and welcome again. And Kelsey, you're the dietitian for Skyterra Young Adult, which listeners, Skyterra Young Adult, if this is the first podcast that you've listened to, is a separate campus from Skyterra Wellness Retreat. It's about 20 minutes away. And Skyterra Young Adult works with guests ages 18 to 29. We take the same core principles of wellness that we teach at our Skyterra Wellness Campus. We tailor it to a younger audience, and we add in some additional therapy and one-on-one to really give young adults a springboard and a launch pad into adulthood in a way that probably I wish that I had going into adulthood. You learn how to really take care of yourself, how to take care of your wellness, how to manage your stress, how to move your body, how important sleep is, how important adventure and recreation are. And then what we're going to talk about with Kelsey today is how to really nurture your body with food and how to fuel it, how to cook for yourself in a healthy and sustainable and enjoyable way.
Yeah.
And just for listeners, this, of course, Kelsey does work with our young adult audience, but primarily what we're going to be speaking about today is just how to improve relationship with food, and really also something that we know that our young adults deal with, and also everybody, is how to navigate social media and how to really find your own truth within that social media universe. So I really think this is a topic that will be relevant for everybody today.
Yeah, I'm excited to do it.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Okay, Kelsey. So welcome again. And I think the first question, just to kind of set the scene, is when our young adult guests show up on campus, what does their relationship with food and their relationship with their bodies really look like?
Yeah, we see a lot of different intensities with their relationship with food. Some will come in and maybe they think they have a really good relationship with food, and as their time goes on, we're realizing maybe there were some things picked up in childhood or throughout social media that I don't want to say they're terrible, but they're not normal. Like, for example, we have a girl on campus right now who, when I first sat down with her probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, she said, "Hey, yeah, I have a good relationship with food. I am excited to do the whole 30 and to stick to it, but not just for 30 days, but for the entire rest of my life."
Oh.
So, yeah, we get that, but also what's cool with her time as she's progressed is the second week she came to me and said, "I'm realizing that I am starting to overeat at night, and I have no idea why, and it's been happening for the last few months." So typically, like the second or third week that they're with us, they'll build more rapport with me and kind of break down the walls of what's actually been going on at home. So with her, she was noticing that, so I sent her, and I started talking about, like, what do the macronutrients actually do for your body, because we were realizing carbohydrates were terrifying. And yeah, I mean they were allowed at certain times of the day, but not allowed at other times of the day.
So very restrictive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or like her eggs, I was coming up at breakfast and watching the egg yolks being taken out and thrown in the dumpster and only cooking with egg whites. So different things will happen like that with guests, and we'll just kind of, in sessions, we'll break down, like, what do macronutrients even do for you? And why should you not take a whole macronutrient out or a certain type of food out of the diet? A lot of the times I will talk about mindfulness eating with them, and just with that, I feel like there's so much distraction going on at meal times that they're not even realizing when they're getting full. Or they'll be reading a book and they'll just be munching away at whatever is going on. And so they're distracted when they're eating, and so they're not realizing hunger and fullness cues anymore, and they've kind of lost sight of those. So we see that kind of restrictive eating, but we'll also see people coming in wanting to gain a lot of muscle and kind of transform their body. So recently we had a guest who came in wanting like triple the amount of protein that he actually needed, just because that's what social media has told him to do. So we also go over the scientific ways of figuring out your protein needs. And everyone is individualized.
Yeah. It sounds like, and I know, Kelsey, you've also done some work on our Skyterra Wellness Campus working with our older guests. And it sounds like guests come in and there are rules. And where those rules probably come from a lot of different places. I'm hearing maybe internally, but it's something that I've seen on social media or something that I, quote unquote, should or should not be doing. And it seems like that's kind of what you're dealing with, at least when guests first arrive.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like, and in classes I'll have newer guests also interrupt me and say, "That's not what I've heard. I've heard the opposite." And yeah, and it might come from, for the young adults, it might come from a parent, and from the wellness guests, it might come from a magazine or social media. But I also see social media, obviously, up at the young adult campus, which is huge, which is probably the most confusing thing. I even had a guest reach out last night, like, "Hey, I'm reading about all kinds of protein powders. I don't know which one to get. I don't know what to look for. Do you have a specific brand? Because I've looked at 3 different Instagram accounts, and they all have different brands that they love.
Because
and I
they're
don't know.
probably trying to sell it so
Right.
that they get a percentage. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you say, like, for that guest in particular who was asking about the protein powder? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, I told him 3 things. I said, why don't you look at the added sugars, what's actually being added? If there's no added sugars, like what sugar alcohol are they using, if they're using one? And then looking at the ingredients. I mean, how many ingredients are there and what are they? Trying to look for more natural ingredients for him. But I also asked him, what brands are you looking at? And we were able to figure out what brand was best for his needs and what he wanted and the budget he was on.
How long does it take guests to kind of cut out the noise from social media and really truly listen to you? So everything that you just said right now is really good advice. Added sugars, sugar alcohol, integrity of ingredients. How long does it take them to say, oh, you know what? This is the person that I need to be listening to?
Yeah, I would say their 3rd week.
Okay.
Their 1st and 2nd week, they're still not sure of, is this the right fit for me as in the program? Do I really want to open up to this stranger about my eating habits? I mean,
it's very personal
it
for
is
people.
Very personal, which I think being a young adult, what helps is you're able to see them day after day after day and build the rapport, not just in nutrition classes, not just in a one-on-one setting, because it can be scary. Their 1st week, they're like, why are you asking me about what I'm eating? That's my business. So yeah, their 3rd week is typically where the therapist has done some work on their end, and now they're coming to me and they're saying, actually, I feel like this is a problem too.
And do they ever say to you, as the 1st and 2nd week go on and they've been learning how to eat and they've been opening up to you, do they ever say, hey, I feel better, or I feel like I have more energy, or I feel like I can do this hike or this workout?
Yes, that is the biggest thing, is now they've stepped away from their old eating habits of whatever that may be. Typically it's schedule based. Like a lot of times we see young adults coming in, they're not waking up till 11 o'clock. They're eating maybe around 12 or 1 p.m. for the first time. They're eating again maybe at 8 p.m. and that might be eating out. And then they're staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning to eat again, which is just throwing your entire alarm clock off.
Yeah.
So when they come in by their 3rd week and we've got them on that sleep schedule and the wake up routine and they're eating very nutrient dense foods, that's usually when we see huge transformation happening, especially we see it in the hikes and we see it in the workouts and how easier it is to get up just because they're fueling their body correctly. And they're active all day.
And Kelsey, you, every week guests meet with you for a one-on-one session, is that right?
Yeah.
And what was, when you first, in that very first session, that first week when you sit down with them, I know they're probably hesitant, but how do you work to build rapport, and kind of what happens in that first session?
Yeah, it depends on the guest. Sometimes I offer going for a walk just to give it, like, there's not as much direct eye contact.
Yeah.
Like, how's your eating habits? So we'll go for a walk with some of the guests, or we'll go sit outside just so it's less confined in a room. And just I first start off by asking them about where they're coming from, why did they choose to come to Skyterra, and then we'll dip into, if you could have one nutrition goal by the end of your stay here, what would it be? What would you like to see your life in that realm?
Do you ever hear, I mean, I'm assuming, I know everybody's goal would be different, but are there some goals that you hear more than others?
Yes, typically they start off with the results-based goals of, I want to lose blank amount of pounds.
Sure.
Or I want to gain this much muscle type of thing. But sometimes I do get guests where they are saying, I know my eating habits are so poor and I just want to feel better. Like, I'm tired of, I don't know what it was about yesterday, but there was another guest who reached out and said, I finally found what was wrong with my sleeping habits. And she's been able, it's like, she was with us last fall and she's been able to find a diet that has helped her stay awake throughout the day. which is crazy to hear. I mean, she has been on this journey for years and years of like falling asleep in class and not
Oh
being
my
able
gosh.
yeah. And she's been able to figure out a routine that works for her.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's food-based. Yeah. And gives her energy. So it's cool.
That's
to
a
hear those
huge, yeah,
stories.
that's a huge accomplishment for her, and kudos to you
Mhm.
too for helping her finally figure
Yeah.
that out.
Yeah.
What was it? Do you know what it was? I'm just curious.
I haven't responded.
Okay.
She just I read it on Instagram and it was like 11 o'clock and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Then I went to bed. So.
Okay, so we were talking about just kind of what happens in that first session. I know you have mentioned before, you kind of start to explain macronutrients, and this is why your body needs them, and this is what they do for you to allow you
Right.
to function physically and mentally. What is there any other education that happens in that first session that's really important for guests?
In the first session, that's essentially what we go over is like what is food.
Yeah.
when I ask the question like what is a macronutrient, they don't have an answer. 7 times out of 10. Some people are really knowledgeable about it, but other people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
So we start off very basic, and typically I try to get most guests on an intuitive eating track by the time they leave, meaning get back to those cues that you were innately born with of I'm hungry or I'm full. We just lose track. We're humans. We're constantly busy or moving on to the next thing. There's never really time. Like, I feel like society has kind of gone away from giving you time to eat. Like, that's a lot of times I hear that people are working while they're eating.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't have time to eat.
Yeah.
So.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. So, and you had mentioned too, mindful eating and intuitive eating. What is the difference between those two?
Yeah, I think intuitive eating is more of like honing in what do I want to eat? Like, what am I really needing to nurture my body? And I think mindful eating is staying present in the moment without distractions and really paying attention to what you are eating and how it feels and what your body feels like 30 minutes after you eat and what really fills you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then do most guests come in with a structured eating? I know you said the noon and then maybe 8 p.m. and then maybe 2 o'clock at night. Is that pretty consistent what you see, especially with this younger adult population?
Yeah, I wish it wasn't, but it is. The more I see guests and the more I talk to them about their habits before coming into Skyterra, it rarely do I see someone who is waking up at 7, 8, or 9 a.m. to eat. And if they are waking up at those times, they are waiting to eat until 11 or 12. But and they'll typically tell me, like, I'm not hungry before working out, like, I cannot get food in. And as they slowly progress, like, if they try to eat, like, half an apple or half of a slice of toast with avocado on there, the more they do that, the more their body is adapt to get that fuel in. Like, the more they get hungry in the morning, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I know both at Skyterra Wellness and at Skyterra Young Adult, we have set meal times for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
What are the meal times at Skyterra Young Adult? So we're going from a later eating pattern to something that starts much earlier. What does it look like?
Yeah. So it's right now our meal times are 8:30 in the morning, 12 to 1, and then 6 to 7 are meal times. Breakfast, if they want to get up earlier than 8:30, they are more than welcome. We rarely see that, but 8:30 is early enough for them. And actually their first week, they're willing to do it because they think I need to follow the crowd. And the guests that are already there have already set the tone for the person coming in. So if they already see that 3 or 4 guests are already eating at 8:30, they're going to say, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
And now I'm following the leader.
And do they notice, if they're eating at those much different times, they must notice changes in how they feel throughout the day?
Yeah. Yeah, especially throughout the workout. I mean, they start working out. like strength training and cardio around 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not eating before then, they'll come to me at 11 and they'll say, I was lightheaded my entire workout.
Interesting, yeah.
We've had a few guests who have had to sit on the ground because they've been lightheaded. And it's, I mean, and then Mira goes or asks, well, what did you have for breakfast? And usually it's nothing.
Yeah.
If that happens. I mean, we rarely see that. And if we do see it, it's on their first week. But they learn their lesson, to eat before a workout. So.
And Mira is our fitness specialist
Yes.
at Young Adult.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kelsey, about kind of what you see when guests arrive? Anything we haven't mentioned already?
I think the only other thing is when we see the bodies being fueled properly, we also see them doing so much better on hikes and excelling so much better their first week. I mean, fitness does play a huge role into that and getting their cardiovascular up, but also on hikes when they're fueling at 12 p.m. and then going on a hike at 2, like they kick butt.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah. They're able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think my next question for you is, I know this is a huge question, Kelsey, but how do any of us improve our relationship with food? How do you work through that with our guests? What does that look like over the course of their stay?
Yeah, so after we talk about, I introduce intuitive eating typically with them. With that, I'll try to work in mindfulness at the same time. So I'll challenge them, do not get on your phone this week when you're eating lunch or dinner. At least one meal a day, I want you to not be on your phone and actually concentrate on how you're chewing your food and how it feels and how you're feeling throughout the meal. So that's their first task. Mm-hmm. Another thing I work with them on is self-compassion and kind of rewiring their brain with how they're talking to themselves. So with many of the guests too, we see a lot of like almost like bad self-talk or like poor self-talk of like, this has never worked for me. I can never get to be in this position, or I will never have the body I want, or I will never blah, 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 whatever.
And we've talked about self-compassion on this podcast many times.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. So me and the therapist work very closely too with them on that and just like rewiring how do you talk to yourself, because it really does go a long way, especially if guests are coming in wanting to transform their body in any way, shape, or form. Talking to yourself in a positive way and encouraging yourself along the way and not giving up is going to get you a heck of a lot further than constantly putting yourself down and telling you, like, you're such an idiot, or why did you do that, or we've been down the same road before, why can't we do it better? Yeah, so after the 4th week, I kind of take a step back and there's not as much education going on. And it's more of just watching them grow and do it themselves. And if they have questions along the way, I'm always there. But I would say the 4 through the 8 weeks is more of a check-in on how are things going that you've already learned how to do.
That's a pretty quick, 4 weeks is a pretty quick turnaround to be able to have the mindset shift to almost be able to do this on your own. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, especially, they're getting... Yes, there's sessions with me, but also like 2 nutrition classes outside of that. So they're constantly being fed nutrition information.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Kelsey, how do you help them reframe their thinking around quote unquote junk food or like bad food or like food that I shouldn't eat? I heard you mention at the beginning the Whole30, which is a diet that seeks to, for 30 days, eliminate processed food completely.
Yeah.
But is certainly not meant to be anything that you do for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I haven't talked about that yet. That is probably our most common thing that I see coming in, is the reason they're so hesitant to say anything that first meeting with me is they are eating the quote-unquote bad food or the junk food that they know they shouldn't eat because society has told them they should not eat it. I completely try to rewire their neuron pathways of just looking at food as food, period. It's not something to be looked bad on or looked at as junk food, because essentially what happens is when they start saying like, oh, I ate those chips and they're bad, now I'm bad and I've done something bad. And that's when the guilt and the shame comes on. So we talk about it in terms of nutrient density. Like maybe potato chips don't have as much nutrient density to them, but they do have energy that they're giving you, and they do have a satisfying factor to them.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they do. And I also say, like, those are your nostalgic foods.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I just want a cosmic brownie, and I let myself have one.
Food that fuels your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember my dad would always when I would get off the bus, he would have a glazed donut just sitting right there for me. And so when I eat glazed donuts now, it makes me think of my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and that fuels your soul. And that's important.
Yeah. And once you remove that, like, this is bad, I can't have that, I mean, it really does take it off the pedestal in your brain of, like, this is off limits. Yeah.
And then I know gut health, too, is something that we teach at Skyterra as having a lot of importance. Do the young adult guests know a lot about gut health?
They don't when they come in, but by golly, they do when they leave. I have so many classes on gut health, it's not even funny. But yeah, so gut health also, I think, is a huge thing of why they're getting all the energy that they do throughout the middle of the day when they used to feel like they're in a slump. I feel like the fiber that they're getting, we give them a lot of fiber and a lot of probiotics at Skyterra Young Adult, and that really does feed all the little microorganisms in your gut, and it really does give you so much energy. So another thing that I do with them, which they love, it's not my idea, it was a medical doctor, his name is Tim Spector, who came up or invented this thing called a diversity jar.
Tell us about the diversity jar.
Okay. So it's in my Be Friend Fiber class, and we basically we use bags, but you can use a jar if you're bougie like that. But yeah, so he said what you do is every time you see like a nut or a seed, flaxseed, hemp seed, any sort of dried fruit, anything like that, that's all considered a plant. And anytime you see one at Walmart, Target, wherever you shop, Walgreens, Super Saver if you're in Nebraska. Anytime you see one of those, you just pick one up, a bag of anything, and you add it to your diversity jar. He said it's recommended that you get 30 plants a day, which is a lot, and it can be very intimidating. But because we have such a diverse microbiome, we also need to feed it diverse plants, just because humans thrive off diversity. So yeah, we made these diversity jars, and we had all kinds of coconut flakes, hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, almonds, cranberries. We had more than that, but we added all of these into a little bag, and every time, a lot of them, I would say 3 or 4 of the guests were already making smoothies in their morning for breakfast. So they would just take a little bit of that diversity jar and sprinkle it over their smoothie or their yogurt, and right there they already have 10 to 15 plants.
That's such a great idea.
So it was Tim Spector's idea, not mine. But we have taken it on, and they love it. So yeah.
And then you mentioned your Befriend Fiber class. You also have a Feed Your Flora class.
Feed Your Flora. Yeah, Feed Your Flora goes into more of like the scientific, how does this work? Like why is our gut considered the second brain? And how is your brain and your gut connected? And yeah, so it goes into all of the scientific chemistry of it.
And then anything else that you do, Kelsey, in working with our guests on just how to help them improve their relationship with food?
I think on my end, that's, for the most part, we've covered it. I work very, very closely with both our fitness specialist and therapist on Young Adults Campus to make sure they're getting the full care that they need, considering self-compassion, and a lot of them do have body transformation goals that they have in mind. So I work very closely with both of them just to make sure that they really do go and thrive when they leave our campus.
And that's really important. I know how closely your team works just to try to hit all of the pillars of wellness for all of our guests.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about, I know you've talked about just guests after they've been at Skyterra Young Adult working with you, they feel better, they have more energy, but tell me about other changes that you notice. What about their confidence? What does that look like?
Yeah. I think we see it more so inward that comes outward with confidence. They typically feel the internal changes, like the energy throughout the day. They also feel themselves like not being as tired on hikes, which gives them a boost of confidence. And then probably the 6th week is when we see like physical changes happening with their bodies and their minds. And that's when they really bloom on the 6th week. Woody said it, our director.
Woody's our general manager, yes.
Manager. He said it yesterday, something about we see this like extra spark in them on their 6th week. And it's true, because I think we see the internal and external confidence coming together and playing a role. And that's really, it's true. The health coaches up there really don't, we really do step back and just watch them like flourish the last 2 weeks with us.
And we've had in earlier episodes, listeners, we've had young adult guests on this podcast talking about their transformations. And I think I know for sure I've hosted those. I know Alan has as well. And I know both of us have just been blown away by just the guests' ability to speak about their journey in a really beautiful and eloquent and life-changing way. It's incredible to see just what you and your team are able to do.
Yeah. I never expected the change that I would see in the 8 weeks of them being here. We'll see someone who has just such poor health habits and they blossom. And we'll get emails from their parents saying, I don't even know who this kid is. Like, this is completely different. They used to never want to do this, and now they're just doing it all on their own. Yeah, it's cool.
I think in 8 weeks is really, relatively speaking, not a very long amount of time, but I think it speaks to not only the power of wellness and what you can do when you're treating your body with care and respect, but also what your team is able to do.
Yeah.
And just providing the guidance and then, like you say, stepping back and letting them bloom and blossom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they're being supported in ways that they've never been supported before.
Yeah.
With the truth instead of like every influencer shouting different things at you.
Yeah, block out that noise.
Yeah, block that out.
Okay, Kelsey. So let's give our listeners a few things that they can do. So, of course, what we would love most of all would be if you would come to Skyterra or Skyterra Young Adult. But what are some other things? I know you mentioned the diversity jar. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's an applicable thing that everyone can take home with them. And if they're already at home, that's great. Mason jars, if you want a mason jar, it's basically free.
Yeah.
They don't cost anything. But that's a very applicable thing. And to take care of your gut is really to take care of your life, in my opinion. There's so much science being correlated back to the gut of taking care of your health just with your gut. So diversity jars for sure. I also think it starts with self-talk and how you speak to yourself along your health journey. Like, if you find yourself beating yourself up throughout that journey, I don't know. I don't want to say that you're going to not have success, but it really will.
Yeah, be compassionate with yourself.
Yeah. Another thing is trying to stick to those structured meal times. If you're finding yourself getting cravings or overeating at night, take a look at how your timing of meals go throughout the day. And if you're not getting in proper fuel within 1 to 2 hours of waking up, maybe start with that. And just kind of getting back to an alarm clock of how you're eating throughout the day.
Yeah, stick to the meal times.
Yeah.
And then any book recommendations for us?
Yeah, I think a huge one that changed my life and what I find so much truth in is Metabolism Makeover by Megan Hansen.
Yes.
She is a registered dietitian, and she has the actual truth out there of like how you change how you'll feel. Yes, it's called Metabolism Makeover for a reason, but confidence will come with that. you'll feel much better. Your energy will be higher. She hits a lot of strong points in that book.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun.
And listeners, if you want more information on Skyterra Young Adult, visit skyterraya.com. If you want more information on Skyterra Wellness, skyterrawellness.com. And then if you're looking for recipes, videos, visit skyterraathome.com. If you have any questions for Kelsey or anybody on our staff, send us an email at inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Thank you again, Kelsey. We will definitely have you back on to hear about your experience with scrambled oats or whatever you're going to rename it.
Yes, thank you. I can't wait to try them.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.